Welcome back to another episode of Ocean Decoded Live Monday. This is where, it's Monday, August, 17th today. And we are talking about breaking news that have just happened. We're going to break some news on this episode on the mining conflict that's happening in the Mariana Islands, Northern Mariana Islands. We're going to talk about sand mining conflict in Indonesia, and we're going to kind of go over the wild orca hunting behavior that's gone viral over the last couple of weeks. And also, I have a spotlight on the podcast that I talked about today. We have Matthew Gianni's story about going from fisher to international advocate. We're going to talk all about that. We can have a Q&A if we have the people on to do this kind of stuff. And I'm excited. I'm excited to start. I'm excited to see what happens. And I hope you're excited too. So if you are in and if you're watching, I'm sorry we're starting a little late. I just got this breaking news today. I wanted to make sure that I had all my information. I've been following this story for a while. So let us get into it on the breaking news scale. Look, it is not good news. Deep sea mining has advanced quite a bit in the U.S., as we all know. It's something that we haven't really wanted to see in a while. Even though the ISA, the International Seabed Authority, just met like about 2 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and they said that, look, we're going to put a moratorium on and a lot of countries backed a moratorium on deep sea mining in around the world. And then here we are, the U.S. is not part of the UN Law of the Sea or Convention of Law of the Sea, and so they're just going to head and they're going to do it in their own zone, which they have the right to do. But they're not doing it for the right reasons. Obviously, they're doing it for the extraction, they're doing it for the money, but they're not looking after what's happening to what's going to happen to the local people, what is going to happen to the environment in that area, and how it's going to affect other things like fisheries and just health and well-being all over the place. So here's the story. The Marine Minerals Administration, the MMA, published a proposed leasing notice for a potential minerals lease sale in federal waters on the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, the CNMI. And it's basically framed by the agency as supporting domestic critical mineral supply chains, energy security, and economic growth. And so the acting MMA director, Matt Giancona, I guess is how you pronounce it, says that the process combines science-based analysis, environmental review, and transparency. MMA has completed environmental assessment on potential impacts of issuing commercial leases in the area. This is the notice off of the Bureau of Energy Management site, and you can take a look at that. I'll put the link in the show notes after this is done. So the notice of availability publishes in the Federal Register August 18th, which is tomorrow. And so something that's interesting is, like, issuing this notice doesn't necessarily guarantee that the lease sale is going to happen, or that the collection activity is going to occur. It's the final leasing notice would still need to be published at least 30 days before any sale date. So there's still time to not have this go through. But, this administration, looking at what has been going on from an environmental impact standpoint, they don't really care. They're just going to go ahead. Just some history behind this is that a while ago, I think it was back March or May, earlier this year, they started to say, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to issue an RFI, a request for information. And it's a comment period, basically saying, hey, what do you know about this deep sea mine? Like, what do you want? Like, for the people around CNMI, do you want this leasing to happen? Do you want deep sea mining to happen in your area? With people around the U.S. and all over the world, do you want this to happen? You have this time. You have 30 days to comment. I think it was extended. You had comment time. I think it may have been even over 2025 and 2026, the comment period. But it's 30 days. It even got extended. And at the end, as I interviewed Angelo Villagomez, we had our podcast, the Polar Bears and Flip Flops. He came on and he said, look, there was like over 66,000 comments against deep sea mining, and like 3 that were for deep sea mining. And then so that got taken up by the government. The government reviewed it, and they came out and they doubled the size of the deep sea mining area that they're going to look at there. They're going to lease out. So not only did they just ignore what most people, like 90% of the people, were saying, but they also said, you know what, we're actually going to double it because we want more of these critical minerals. We want them to happen. And this is without, like you could say they did an assessment, an environmental assessment, but I don't really trust this environmental assessment is going to really bring out what's needed. There are people who are saying that the CNMI was not consulted. The government was not consulted by the federal government to be able to, whether they wanted it to be leased. They came out and they came out to one of the committee meetings, and it was Guam, Guam representatives, American Samoa representatives, and CNMI representatives saying they did not agree with this going forward because they weren't consulted and they don't know how it's going to affect their islands. Guam put a moratorium on deep sea mining. American Samoa and CNMI are going through this process right now, and it's deeply disturbing that the government is not listening to the people, which is exactly what the government should be doing in this situation. And so not having this process put out the way it should be and just ignoring them and going forward is not the right way to do things. And let's be honest, this is not something that we know a lot about. Deep sea mining hasn't really been done on a commercial level for a long time. When it was done, we saw a lot of damage to the bottom of the sea, and that recovery still hasn't happened. Right? 3 or 4 years later, the biodiversity that was there before the deep sea mining happened in the Clarington-Clipperton zone was still not recovered 3 or 4 years later. Right? So we know that there could be damage. We do know that. We don't know the extent of that damage, especially if it's going to be a full-blown thing. And then just at the ISA, the International Seabed Authority meetings in Kingston, Jamaica, just last month, we saw the conclusions of that, which I'm going to talk about in my How to Protect the Ocean podcast interview with Matthew Gianni on Friday. But the conclusions basically came out and said, hey, you know what? This actually really isn't that economically viable. And we're starting to realize that as the batteries are getting better and they're depending less on critical minerals that are being mined in these areas like manganese and copper and nickel, and they're just like, this may not make sense to actually do it at all. So we need to do more research on whether this can be done, and we still don't know the effects that could happen, the damage that could happen on a full mining industry. There is rumors that this might just be like a pump and dump kind of situation where it looks like mining is going to happen. There's a bunch of investment that happens. It doesn't happen, but the executive leadership can go out with a lot of money because they can sell their shares at the right time. So who knows what's going to happen? I would love to hear your thoughts. Put them in the comments below because this pisses me off. I'll be honest. I'm not happy about this one bit. Angelo Villagoma is a good friend of mine. He's from the CNMI. He's trying to work up a situation where we could help out and stop deep sea mining. He's got a great campaign. I got to look it up on here just to see if I can get it going here, just to make sure. He's got a great campaign on how we can combat it. And so I'm just going to look it up here. It's called Miss Abyss Octopus. So check that out. Instagram, Miss Abyss Octopus. It's basically like a cutout of a Dumbo octopus, which is gorgeous. And you can take it around. You can put it on your Instagram and say, hey, I'm against deep sea mining. Take a picture, put the right tags, cut it out, put the right tags, take a picture with your class, with your family, with your friends, and show the government of the U.S. that you do not want deep sea mining. Especially if you're American, this is a time to stand up because you just never know what is going to happen. There are elections coming up in November, and if these elections go the right way, all this effort could happen to stop deep sea mining. So get out and vote. That's the biggest thing you can do right now, but also know the facts.